You'll notice that in my toolbar, I have two shapes over here. They look very similar to one another. One of them is called the frame tool. The other one is called the rectangle tool. Well, what's the difference? Frankly, I don't think there's a really big difference about it, but best practice states that if you're going to place images, they should be in frames. Best practice says that. But I've placed them in shapes, and I haven't had a problem. But I'm going to follow best practice. I'm going to go to the frame tool, but instead of a rectangle, I'm going to go to an ellipse. Okay, so I'm going to draw an ellipse. And if I hold shift down, it's going to lock it and give me a circle. So while I have this object selected, I'm going to hit File, Place. So let's recap. I drew a circle. I have the circle selected. I'm going to select File, Place. So now I'm going to go back and select that image of the lotus and hit Open. You'll notice that it places the image not in a frame the size of the image. It placed it in a frame that I constructed and centered it within that object. Does that make sense? And once again, if I click on the edge, I can alter the frame shape. If I click between the edge and the bullseye, I can move the objects around. If I click on the target, it isolates the image, and I can move my image within the frame. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay, one last example. I'm going to keep this over here, and I'm going to draw a polygon. Okay, so here's my polygon. Okay, so the first image I placed was a JPEG. In this case, I'm going to place a different image. So this is a lovely portrait that one of your peers are working on. I'm going to scale this up so it fits in the document. So when we look at content in InDesign, by default, we're working in what's called normal view. That's the term that it's called, normal. And in normal, I get all of the edges for my objects. I see the margins, I see the columns, I see the gutters, I see the bleed. But in some cases, I don't want to see that. I want to hide that information. And so then I want to go into what's called preview mode. So over here at the bottom of my toolbar, this is normal. What's the hotkey for normal? You see that? What's the hotkey? W. Now, next to that, I have preview mode. What's the hotkey for that? W. So W will hide and toggle preview mode back and forth. So this is preview mode. It gets rid of all of those lines. And in some cases, this is really nice to look at because it hides all of those visual aids. It gives me a better sense of what my layout might look like. Now, look at the image, the second image that I placed. That was an Illustrator file. It's a vector file. Does it look good? No, it looks pixelated, right? It looks really bad. Well, what's interesting is that vector files are scalable. It means that I should be able to make it as big or as small without having any loss. Well, in this presentation, it's giving me a sense of loss. It looks pixelated. It looks wrong. So what's going on? Well, InDesign, don't panic. InDesign has a performance-based feature to have it operate more efficiently. Okay, so the performance-based feature is a visual aid. So it's under the View menu. So you'll notice that under View, there's a submenu called Display Performance. What is it set to? Typical. So typical is the normal mode that designers work in because it allows the software to work more seamlessly and efficiently. You guys know what software chug is? You know when you move something and it kind of gets stuck and you're waiting for it to update? Well, if InDesign gets too big and heavy, that's what's going to happen. You're going to move an image and you're going to wait like 5 seconds before it refreshes and updates. So to compensate for that, they've created this typical performance. All right, so if I go to high quality, you'll notice that it displays the image for what it really is. If I go back to the same area and I go to fast display, it presents the content in what's called wireframe mode. This is a wireframe. Wireframe is a common term used in web development where you create placeholders of basic shapes, primitives, to identify a design element. So we're looking at it basically in wireframe mode. Display performance typical. Some of my graphics might look pixelated, but it's just a preview. And if I go to display high quality, it's going to show me what it really looks like. So when I'm testing my work, I will test it by removing the normal view. I'll hit W and look at it like this in preview mode. And then I'll change my display performance to high quality. But once I've tested it, oh, it looks good. I'm ready to move on. I'm going to switch back to typical to make sure that it runs better. And I'll go back to normal to get all of my visual aids again. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, so the next thing that I want to do before we cut to another break is I want to place some text in my InDesign file. Now, before I do that, I'm going to move these graphical elements to the side. So, in all honesty, what I'd like to do is I want all of you to follow along with me. So, if you haven't started an InDesign file, I want you to start an InDesign file right now. Okay, so I would like you to set up at least a 2-page document, facing pages, 8.5 by 11, place a couple of images in it, and then what I want you to do next is I want you to launch a website